Welcome and thank you for joining me here once again on Film Pro Productivity. Each week I introduce concepts that film professionals and other creatives can use to make life easier and avoid creative burnout. I also present time management and lifestyle hacks for a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 21, Obliterating Procrastination. This week I'll be talking about another topic which every one of us likely suffers from time to time, procrastination. We'll look at what it is and its causes and list a few techniques and tricks that can be used to burn it to the ground and let you move forward with what you have to do. But last week's episode was my longest episode yet, running at 29 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep this one short. And in that show I talked about what I like to call collabo haters or bad collaborations and how to avoid them. The episode ended up quite long, as in my experience there are a lot of them about. And if you've not experienced them, then lucky you, but check it out as maybe, just maybe, it will help you to protect yourself in future. I mean, I still, despite my best efforts, find myself working with difficult and untrustworthy collaborators time and again, but I am very well prepared to face them down these days. And if you're considering collaborating, just make sure that one, the person that you are working with or planning to collaborate with, I should say, is brilliant and will bring something useful to the table. And if they don't, frankly, you should just do it yourself. And two, that their personality and their values are in alignment with your own. And that part is absolutely vital. I also have a collaboration agreement which you can download for free in the episode 20 show notes. Incidentally, I took on that subject partly because it was on my mind, but also, perhaps mainly, because of the success of the Season 1 episode Time Wasters and how to avoid them. This podcast, from looking at the analytics, has got quite a broad listening base, but it really appears that these tell it how it is style episodes are very, very popular. And you can look out for another episode in the same vein, round about episode 24, when I will be tackling the topic of toxic personality types. But enough of this for now. Let's hang around no longer. We must really get on to today's topic, and I'll pad it out some more, but you know we're here to discuss procrastination. Benjamin Franklin said, "You may delay, but time will not." And don't we know it? Time just nips away at us every day, and with every moment that passes, I am more and more aware that I'll never see it again. As deadlines loom, in fact, as deadlines come closer, my stress levels can increase and make my inability to take action even stronger. Of course, it might be the opposite for you. American cartoonist Bill Watterson said, "You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood." What mood is that? Last-minute panic. But the trouble with last-minute panic, as we're probably all aware, is that it's rarely going to generate your best work. In fact, it's barely going to cover the bases. I still, however, sometimes find myself pulling out a task just as it's due and scrabbling about to complete it. Creatives like film pros and other artists have the additional problem of having to be creative sometimes on demand, and the process of creativity, for me at least, is rarely a one-shot thing. I mostly create and then I review, then possibly seek advice on what I have, and then I move on to a second draft, for example, if it's a script, or a refining recut if it's an edit. The process of revising our work is a powerful one, but that can't begin until we can complete that first draft, and as anyone who's been through this process knows, that first draft is usually the most difficult. My favourite quote on this topic is attributed to Ernest Hemingway, and it's one I use very often, and it's that the first draft of everything is shit. Once you understand that basic premise, and the power of the statement based on the works of the man who said it, it makes pinning down your own first draft a lot more attractive. Time and again, and I've used this analogy in another episode, just after I shoot something, but before I edit, I find myself locked in a kind of procrastination loop. Checking social media and cleaning the house suddenly become the most vital tasks on my to-do list, and I generate a sense of urgency for doing them first. I can find any number of far more important matters like organising the contents of a drawer or surfing on eBay for stuff I don't need, which, had I not had a specific, perhaps imminent task to do, would probably be significantly less important in my mind at that time. My procrastination in a situation such as that is fed by fear. I worry that what I've filmed is no good or will not cut together as I'd imagined it, and 9 times out of 10 that is completely unfounded. And if it isn't unfounded, by the way, your procrastination is maybe based on a worry or even a knowledge that there really is something tricky in there that you're going to have to sort out. Just remember that things are rarely perfect first time about. You can always revise and improve in future passes. And to hammer that one home, here's a quote attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, who said, "It is easier to resist at the beginning than at the end." He's not wrong. In David Copperfield, Charles Dickens writes that procrastination is the thief of time. So like many of the subjects that I tackle here, proven of course by the previous one by Da Vinci there, procrastination is not just a problem of the modern age, and although I am sure that social networking has contributed to the problem, we must also remember that Dickens didn't have the advantages of the easy-to-reach research and inspiration that the internet offers us now. James Clear, in an article that I'll link to in the show notes, says that human beings have been procrastinating for centuries. The problem is so timeless, in fact, that ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle developed a word to describe this type of behaviour: acrasia. Acrasia is the state of acting against your better judgment. It's when you do one thing even though you know that you should be doing something else. Loosely translated, you could say that acrasia is procrastination or lack of self-control. The modern definition is presented on Google as the action of delaying or postponing something, with synonyms such as dithering, delaying and stalling. I'll list all this here, of course, but I have an inkling, a suspicion that if you're listening, you know exactly what procrastination is. Some of you might even be listening to this podcast when you know you should be doing something else. Well, all I can say is that hopefully this episode will get you back into action with a bit of energy behind you. And maybe it'll offer you some solutions. That's why I'm here. So, we know what it is, but the bigger question perhaps is, why do we do it? Do you think that you procrastinate because you are disorganised, lazy, or worse, or because you just don't care enough? The chances are that that's simply not true. Procrastinators are often smart, capable, hard-working people. They just can't get things done on time and can't seem to figure out why. There's an article in Psychology Today that asks 9 questions that might help you to get to the bottom of your own why, and the answers may reveal the real reason behind your procrastination. The first 3 are: 1. When faced with a task, do you think of all the ways it could go wrong? 2. Do you picture how important people in your life might react if you failed? And 3. Do you believe it's better to not try at all than to try your best and fail? If you answered yes to these 3 questions, then that might mean that, like I described in my own edit analogy, that you've got a fear of failure behind your procrastination. The thought of putting in effort but still failing makes you feel anxious, so you choose avoiding and procrastinating instead of moving forward. The next 3 questions asked by the article in Psychology Today are: 4. Are you overwhelmed by the possibility of new responsibilities if you are successful? 5. Do you subscribe to the idea, if I do well, then others will expect more of me? And 6. Do you feel your success will lead to other people finding out the real you? In inverted commas. A yes to these 3 questions might mean that you fear not failure, but success. Procrastination protects you from the higher expectations and greater responsibilities that might come with succeeding. Like those who procrastinate because they fear failure, you keep yourself safe from facing your true limits by avoiding the challenges and putting things off. And the final 3 questions are: 7. Do you believe that if you're going to do something, you should try to do it perfectly? 8. Do you find it difficult to persist when things aren't going just right? And 9. Would you rather avoid doing something rather than doing it imperfectly? If you identify with these 3, then perfectionism may underlie your avoidance. Because you believe that things should be done perfectly, the result is that nothing gets done at all. When faced with a task, you become overwhelmed and frustrated, paralysed by your own impossible standards. While the reasons for procrastination might vary, as we can tell, the results are often the same though. A seemingly endless cycle of anxiety, avoidance and shame. Nothing gets done, and you can't enjoy anything with that guilt hanging over your head. I'm talking here, of course, like I've never tackled the topic before on this podcast, but of course I have. It's difficult to do a show like this without some crossover between episodes, and many of the techniques that I present here to overcome procrastination are covered in depth in other episodes. Indeed, the first topic of the season, that of drive, will feed in directly to what I'm saying. And for some of you out there that identified with the final 3 questions there, top of the list of reasons for procrastinating is likely to be perfectionism, which I tackled in Season 1, Episode 5. You can always go back and listen to those episodes, but since you're here, let's get into some solutions that you can apply right now and discuss anti-procrastination strategies. Several studies show that self-forgiveness can help you to feel more positive about yourself and reduce the likelihood of procrastination in the future. So forgive yourself for procrastinating in the past, and that should allow you to move on. This advice will be of no surprise to any regular listener of the show, but write it down. Just write it down. You can proactively tackle your own work by writing down the tasks that you need to complete and specifying a time for doing them. Seriously, in all things, procrastination or not, remember that if you write a task down, and I've said this a lot, but if you write a task down, you are statistically 80% more likely to do it. I go as far as writing it down onto whiteboards, large whiteboards in my office and at home, so that it's in sight and it's in mind. For some people, the promise of a reward is helpful. If you complete a difficult task on time, reward yourself with a piece of cake or a coffee from your favourite coffee shop. That'll make sure that you notice how good it feels to finish things. And that's part of the productivity cycle that I talked about in an earlier episode. If you miss out the celebration part of the productivity cycle, you're effectively short-circuiting your productivity. The principle behind self-help groups is that peer pressure works. You could find a fellow procrastinator or a friend and ask them to be your accountability partner. You could share with each other and set each other monthly, weekly or bi-weekly tasks or goals and then hold one another accountable. This only works if you both take it seriously though, and I would advise you to see last week's episode on bad collaborators to ensure that they don't drive you absolutely insane at the same time. Next, why don't you try some of my anti-procrastination strategies and systems from episode 9, 4 great hacks to beat procrastination. And those 4 hacks are the 1-touch rule, the 2-minute rule, the 5-minute rule, and the 10-minute rules. And these rules in their various forms will force you to tackle tasks, some of them as soon as they arise, and some of them at specific points which you have defined, rather than letting them build up and overwhelm you. They are very effective techniques which I use every day. Another article in Psychology Today suggests that you should rephrase your internal dialogue. The phrases need to and have to, for example, imply that you have no choice in what you do, and that can make you feel, in their words, disempowered, and might even result in what they call in-self-sabotage. However, exchanging those for I choose to might imply that this is your own project and can make you feel like you're much more in control of your workload. It's quite an interesting article. But there's a couple of specific things that I find particularly useful in keeping that procrastination habit at arm's length. The first of these is to minimise distractions. Turn off the email and the social media, utilise the do not disturb function on your phone and avoid being near a television or a PlayStation or whatever app or toy that you currently have distracting you. Going along with that, just tidying your desk or tidying the space in which you're working can make you much more efficient as well. When I've got piles of things sitting around me, although I'm trying to focus on what I'm doing, somewhere at the back of my mind I'm saying to myself, I really should tidy up this desk. So getting yourself in a space that works for you, I think, is important. The next thing is that there's a book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, which is easily one of the most famous books on productivity and overcoming procrastination out there. I'll link to that in the show notes, but in simple terms it suggests that you put your most important, could be difficult, awkward or stressful jobs first, or job first, specific task first. If you get those tasks that you find least pleasant out of the way early, it will give you the rest of the day to concentrate on work that you find more enjoyable. In the book, Brian Tracy comes back to this 4-part combination over and over again. Number 1, select your most important task. Number 2, begin immediately. Number 3, work on it single-handedly. And 4, finish it. In total, he actually outlines 21 great ways to stop procrastination and get more done. I think it's maybe the subtitle's 21 great ways to stop procrastinating and get more done in less time, in fact. So if you want to get into this even further, then check out that book. It's excellent. Just don't let investigating anti-procrastination techniques in effect become your procrastination crutch. Just remember the 4 rules. Select your most important task. Begin immediately. Work on it single-handedly. Finish it. It is that simple. Now, there's a few wee additional things that I've picked up and I've got notes of here. The first of those is to keep a to-do list to prevent you from conveniently forgetting about unpleasant or overwhelming tasks. That's a good follow-on to my point about writing stuff down. Next, prioritise your to-do list using the techniques described in episode 3, which was the third of this show's pre-season episodes. It's available right now on your podcast app. And I'm quoting here from some article I found, but I can't lay my hands on it. Become a master of scheduling and project planning. Use tools to help you to plan your time effectively and reduce your stress levels. Next, tackle your hardest tasks at your peak times. Do you think you work better in the morning or the afternoon? Identify when you're most effective and do the tasks that you find most difficult at these times. Have a listen back to the episode on mental energy to see what I'm going on about here. That episode for me is possibly one of the strongest that I've made so far. I think it's episode, I'm pulling this off the top of my head, I think it's episode 18, maybe 19, I don't know. It's called Protecting Your Mental Energy. Next up, set yourself time-bound goals. Seriously now, putting stuff in your diary will not only make a difference to your drive, as I mentioned in episode 17, the first of this season, it will have an impact further into your procrastination. If you've got drive, the procrastination will start to fall away. And I've done several episodes on goal setting. Just have a listen back to those and that will give you a bit of a boost. Finally, though, I would say that you should utilise the plethora of available task and time management apps that are available out there. And I recommend specifically Google Calendar and Todoist, which is a free app, Todoist. I think it's available on iOS devices as well as Android. And I've done an episode on some of these things, which I'm going to take a stab at saying it's something like episode 9. Look back, you'll see it. It's something like 5 awesome apps to make you more productive, or words to that effect. And that completes my list of additional tips and tricks to get around procrastination. And some of them might seem slightly contradictory, but all you need to do with anything I present in this podcast is try stuff out, and if it works for you, keep it, and if it doesn't, move on and try something else. You've got a whole load of options there. Alan Dean Foster says that the thing all writers do best is to find ways to avoid writing. And if you recognise that in yourself, whether you're a writer or not, then I hope that this episode has been helpful to you. Like all the techniques, tips and tricks that I recommend in the podcast, I actually use these things and they work. I also recognise when I am procrastinating, and I think that in itself is very valuable. If we can't be honest in ourselves about this sort of thing, then we really aren't going anywhere. As Thomas Jefferson once said, honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. And your call to action this week, if you're suffering from procrastination, is to take your tasks, and if they are in your head, please, 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 for the love of God, write them down. Then use the system presented by Brian Tracy in Eat That Frog to implement them. Select your most important task. Begin immediately. Work on it single-handedly. And finish it. That's all you have to do to beat procrastination and get yourself moving forward again. If you're procrastinating on your own goals and your own dreams, not working for someone else, but on your own vision as a creative, I really urge you to remember the words of author Karen Lamb. She said, "A year from now, you'll wish you'd started today. Thank you once again for tuning into the show, and I really do hope that the information I've presented here, the anti-procrastination hacks and just the background information on it, has been of use to you. And I say this quite often at the end of an episode, I really do appreciate you choosing to spend your time here with me. I know how busy my life is, and when I see the numbers, the listener numbers go up and the subscribers go up on the analytics, I really get a kick out of it, and I'm hoping that you're finding these episodes very, very useful. On next week's show, I'm going to be talking about a rather nasty, creativity-killing, negativity-forming, stress, anxiety and paranoia-inducing ailment called rumination. But don't worry, I'm also going to cover how you can beat it. For now though, take control of your own destiny, keep on shooting, beat that procrastination, and why don't you join me next time on Film Pro Productivity. The music that you're listening to right now is Adventures by Ehumitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website at filmproproductivity.com. Please follow the show on Twitter at FilmProProdPod or find it on Facebook at FilmProProductivity. My personal accounts on Twitter and Instagram are fight_director. You can support the show by subscribing on your podcast app of choice, leaving an awesome review on iTunes preferably if you can, and simply by spreading the word and telling people about it. Have a great week. See you next time.